New York City. Let's go ahead and knock this out right off the bat. New York City, last night, if you were paying attention, which most people were, we found out this Mamdani guy won the Democrat nomination to be the next mayor of New York City. Now, let me pause before we get into him and how this kind of thing happens. And let me just explain something we've talked about before. You may not care for New York City. Maybe you've never been. Maybe you've been and you hated it. Maybe you hate all cities. All those things are totally understandable. Completely understandable. I'm not trying to talk you out of that. But at least understand this. America's cities and America's rural area, they're all part of America. And New York City in particular is our most important city when it comes to finances. There's all kinds of, there's just, for a lot of reasons, New York City is extremely important. So maybe you're watching me right now from rural Arkansas. I'm not suggesting you go to New York City. You might hate it. But understand that New York City matters because it's on our billboard, meaning internationally. People will look at the things that happen in New York City and we will take that as, or they will take that as, well, that's what America's like. For instance, London. How often do you see these reports out of London? Do you see London on social media? How often have we brought up things? What's going on over there in London? But we have these gangs. We have the. You take that as being the UK, don't you? Of course you do. It's human nature. So do I. If New York City implodes more than it already is, it's going to make the entire country look bad. And I care about that a great deal. So now let's talk about this freak who may very well be the next mayor.
The mayor will use their power to reject Donald Trump's fascism, to stop mass ICE agents from deporting our neighbors, and to govern our city as a model for the Democratic Party.
Yeah. He has many public statements, crazy public statements destroying the NYPD. This is a man who's talked about packing the subway full of homeless people. Look, if he's mayor, it's going to be very, very bad. How does this happen? Why does this happen? Well, there is a coalition that we are fighting against as a nation right now. And because of the steps the Democrat Party has taken over the decades, we will have to fight against this coalition for a very long time. This coalition is majorly powerful. And here's what the coalition is. There are the upper crust, highly college-educated elites, college-educated white people for the most part. They are bred with American hatred. It is engraved in them. The longer you spend on a college campus, for the most part, the more communist you are going to be. So these people have been indoctrinated firmly in the fact that this country sucks. And that's why everybody should get to come here and just pillage the place, because this evil country deserves that kind of a thing. That's one part of the coalition. The other part of the coalition is the disloyal foreigner. The disloyal foreigner that Democrats and Republicans have brought in by the million over the decades. Why would Democrats bring in 20 million new foreigners in just 4 years under Joe Biden? And that's not even talking about the tens of millions they brought in beforehand, just the 20 million under Joe Biden. Why are they all about it? Why are they now protecting these people from deportation? Well, you just watched what happened in New York City. Democrats understand that the bread and butter American, the red, white, and blue American, wherever he may be, New York City or Montana or anywhere else, is going to reject their disgusting, despicable communism, and he's going to reject their goal of burning down the country. But the foreigner, he's fine with it. Hand him a welfare check. Hand him a little bit of power. Hand him a little bit of this. Bring in as many of those people as possible. Buy them off with a $500 Visa card. And you haven't just imported foreigners, you've imported a voting army that will march to the polls and put the communists in power forever. That is why they love immigration. By the way, illegal and legal. Mass legal immigration is just as bad as mass illegal immigration. By the way, in case you're wondering, Jesse, has he lost his mind? Is he going too far? Here's one of the ads the guy ran.
बदलने के लिए लड़ रहा हूँ रेंट फ्री बसेस यूनिवर्सल चाइल्ड केयर और सस्ती ग्रोसरीज के जरिए पर आपको एक सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ तुमने कभी किसी को वोट किया
Why do you think that is? This comes back to a conversation you and I have had so many times before. Maybe this guy, as much as it pains me to say it, maybe he now does accurately represent what New York City is. Just like Ilhan Omar, which we've discussed many times before, Rashida Tlaib, these types. We get mad when they say these horrible anti-American things, and we say we should kick them out of Congress. Why? They are representatives, and they accurately represent their area. The problem is not the specific commie. The problem is the demographics of the country have radically changed. We have changed our own people, just destroying their minds in college, and we've brought in a lot of others. And this guy, if elected, can you imagine the things he'll do with his power? He's talking about arresting foreign leaders if they come to town.
And Mayor Mamdani, would you welcome Prime Minister Netanyahu to New York City for whatever he comes for, given the US is not a signatory to the ICC, so he can travel to the US, unlike a lot of other countries. Would a Mayor Mamdani welcome Benjamin Netanyahu to the city?
No. As mayor, New York City would arrest Benjamin Netanyahu. This is a city that our values are in line with international law. It's time that our actions are also.
How could they do that? How could they elect this man? Maybe that's what New York City is now. We don't like to accept these things. And it pains me because I love the place. Maybe he is a very accurate representation of what New York City has become, as painful as that may be. And look, when you think about New York City, I bet you money the NYPD comes to your mind. I bet you it's one of the top 5 things that pop in your mind when you think about New York City, especially after 9/11, all the heroism, but the NYPD, the largest, most powerful, highly trained police force on the planet. Well, surely New Yorkers love the NYPD, right? I don't know. The new Democrat nominee said this about them.
Are you for defunding the police? Are you for a serious reform that people can see on the ground?
I am in favor of defunding the police.
We don't like the accurate representations we see of certain areas of our country, but that doesn't change the fact they're accurate representations. If I look in the mirror and I'm cupcaking over my boxer shorts, I may not like the fact that I've gotten fat, but it's not the mirror that's the problem. The mirror is accurately reflecting what I have become. I know that's sad. I know that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right.
Grocery prices are out of control. The cost of eggs and milk has skyrocketed. Some stores are even using dynamic pricing, jacking up the cost over the course of a day depending on what they can get away with. It doesn't need to be this way. I'm Zohran Mamdani, and as mayor, I will create a network of city-owned grocery stores. It's like a public option for produce. We will redirect city funds from corporate supermarkets to city-owned grocery stores, whose mission is lower prices, not price gouging. These stores will operate without a profit motive or having to pay property taxes or rent, and will pass on those savings to you.
Great. That guy's probably going to be the next mayor of New York City. Jeez. Joining me now, Caroline Downey, Senior Fellow, Independent Women's Forum. Okay, Caroline, I love New York City. Unlike a lot of my conservative friends, I just adore the freaking place. And it makes me sick to my stomach that this guy might be the mayor. Is he going to be the mayor, or is Eric Adams, does he have a shot at what?
Well, Jesse, I'm a New York City resident, and my heart hurts for this city because it's amazing to me that this guy even got this far. It was shocking to see the ranked choice results roll in last night. clearly the system does elevate radical candidates, even though many said, oh, actually gives the voices to moderates. That did not happen last night. But look, I think we have to think about the general election. Like you said, there are other boroughs besides Manhattan. Staten Island, for instance, has a lot of Republicans. There's a lot of independents that still haven't made their voices heard. And I'm not so sure that Mamdani will win the day ultimately. I think we're going to see a lot of momentum fueled into Eric Adams' campaign. Now that he's an independent, he's a former cop. So I think he's going to have a lot of sway with the law enforcement community. That's the backbone of this city, the NYPD and other first responders. And I mean, I think we got to see Cuomo or Curtis Sliwa on the Republican side basically back one or the other, because we can't have a situation where one is cannibalizing the other among voters. And then, there's no alternative to Mamdani, and Mamdani ends up winning by default. But I don't think it's over yet. I'm seeing a lot of murmurs on the ground from Gen Z conservatives like myself in Manhattan that are saying, we're going to campaign for Eric Adams. We're all in for Eric Adams because he's not perfect. He's filled with scandals, his reputation that is, just like Cuomo was. It wasn't exactly killing nursing home patients, but it was allegedly taking bribes, and he's a party boy. He likes to live it up in the clubs in the middle of a Tuesday, at like 5 o'clock. But he also is more of a moderate, and he actually has governed, I would say, pretty well over the last year. I think we're pretty happy with Eric Adams' leadership. And I think now he's really got to step it up.
Yeah, honestly, I think I'm going to have Eric Adams on my show at this point in time just to try to save New York. Although it is a little weird at that age being in a club. I'm 43. I would rather die than go into a club. Anyway, so can you explain to me the Cuomo factor? Because from the outside looking in, I'm not a New Yorker, even though I go all the time. I just assumed with his name ID and thus the Cuomo name ID period in New York and the money behind him, I kind of just assumed he was going to be the next mayor of New York City. And he couldn't beat this fruitcake commie from Uganda? Why?
I think I felt the same thing as you. The Cuomo dynasty is very strong. It carries a lot of weight. The patriarch of the Cuomo family is obviously Mario, whose name is on the bridge that replaced the Tappan Zee. This family is very well connected, and I would argue that they really love this city, that because they have so many generations of political leadership in this city, they're very much devoted to its cause, even if they sometimes have progressive, not so great ideas. But Mamdani is very green. He hasn't been here that long, at least as a citizen. He might have gone to, I think it was Bronx High School, but he was born in Uganda. And let's just zoom out here. Regardless of how long he's been a native of Manhattan or hasn't been, his ideas fly in the face of everything that is important to the city and to this country. He has such a hostility, not only civilization, he is fundamentally at odds with New York City, which has been filled with these Gen Z transplants who are subsidized by their parents, who pay their rent. They really haven't worked hard like the blue collar working class of New York City has to build this city up. And you mentioned, so with the Cuomo factor, I think what was most interesting about the results breakdown is that those who made, I believe, under $50,000 in income supported Cuomo. So the working class, the blue collar, those Democrats supported Cuomo. The middle to upper class, those who are considered more wealthier, the college educated, they all voted for Mamdani. So much for the socialist candidate that is supposed to be representing the poor and, liberating the proletariat. The proletariat does not want Mamdani because they're not stupid. They know that rent control has been tried many times before in New York City, and it always fails. It always punishes landlords and leads to their buildings to fall into disrepair. And you can apply that principle to every single issue across the board. The rich elite that are Democrats voted for Mamdani, and as soon as the policies they voted for are actually implemented or actually imposed, they're going to realize how much they suck, and they're going to evacuate. They're going to send their kids to private schools. They're going to go to the suburbs. They're going to go to Florida. And then who's going to be left in Manhattan? The poor people who didn't vote for this, and they don't have the mobility to get out just as much as the rich people do.
Caroline, Can you explain these elite of New York? Is this when you vote for, let's say you're one of these snooty, college educated, rich New Yorkers, and you go vote for this nutball communist? Do you do so just so you can brag to your friends about it at parties? Because I've known Democrats like this in big cities. They act like the most left. They act left of Mao, and it's almost like they can brag about it at parties. It becomes almost a medal they wear on their chest that, hey, look at this crazy guy I supported. Is there some of that there?
I've seen this in the wild. There's a lot of flexing and virtue signaling and a holier than thou
Mhm.
mentality, I think, among older, frankly, boomer, college educated elites in Manhattan. And they've been very insulated. They've lived here for many years. And that's not to say that they're any less of New Yorkers, but they are in such a bubble that they kind of forget that there's a larger country, that there's other interests to be represented. And I think it comes fundamentally from a place of guilt, self-flagellation, which is we somehow have something to repent for as white upper class Americans. And so we're going to elect a guy who is an avowed communist, who's a member of the Socialist Party, and then, of course, as part of that identity politics framework that they're all bought into, they think, Israel needs to be disciplined, and Mamdani is a Hamasnik. He's like if you took any random agitator on a Columbia protest encampment and made him mayor. That's basically who Zohran Mamdani is. And I just think the older generations of Democratic New Yorkers, they think, again, like you said, it gives them brownie points, like woke brownie points with their friends. We saw Cynthia Nixon is just one example of the celebrities who stumped for Mamdani, and I believe also did TikToks with Mamdani. She was in the famous New York show Sex and the City, right? And that was an iconic show, an iconic cultural, you could argue masterpiece of the 90s. But she's so disconnected from the actual problems of New York City. I mean, a lot of these people, I don't even think they know how socialism starts. I mean, or how communism starts. Democratic socialism is basically communism on training wheels, but I don't think they really know that. I think they just believe that it's going to make everything more equitable. It's going to give them bragging rights with their friends. But once it's actually implemented, we're going to see a lot of suffering. We're going to see a lot of not only inequities, but a lot of distortions in the market. We're already seeing capital flight, investment, and financial firms flee probably for the winter Wall Street of Florida. We're going to see another asset price boom. Ron DeSantis can't wait. But, there's just going to be kind of a brain drain of, I think, opportunity and innovation out of New York. And that trickles down to the small businesses. And like I said, the working class people who are going to face the consequences, but the rich won't.
Caroline, is there a larger Muslim demographic in New York City than people realize? I know New York City has always had a million different demographics, right? Italians and Chinese and Jews, and that everybody knows the history of New York City. It's long, but is there an Islamic aspect to this as well, where that population in New York has grown larger, and therefore candidates like that are going to have an easier time getting elected?
Well, look, New York City is very diverse. It's the melting pot. That's supposed to be the claim to fame. But I think at some point it became a hotbed of the border crisis. Like, we know that that's true with at least Hispanic and Central American migrants flooding into the city, overwhelming the facilities. But I think in tandem with that, I do think that there's been an increase in other kinds of migrants who have come to that part of Manhattan. I mean, Mamdani, like I said, he was raised in Uganda, or he was born in Uganda. He had his early childhood there, and then he came over here. But I think the biggest turning point in his young intellectual career and then political career probably was when he went to Bowdoin College in Maine, which is your classic, very progressive liberal arts school. Once again, very insulated, just filled with Marxist professors. Like, just pick a random liberal arts school in America, especially in the Northeast, especially in New England, and you're gonna get an activist at the end of that. But I mean, I think for him it was probably written in stone that he was going to be a radical Democratic upstart. It's just very unfortunate that he made it this far. And frankly, if it wasn't for the ranked choice voting system, I'm not so sure he would have. But that's a real disappointment for New York City.
No doubt. Caroline, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.